take versus this enemy. One, the enemy is what we're calling this evening totalitarian Islam, otherwise called radical Islam, political Islam, fundamentalist Islam, Islamism. I do think there's a difference between Islam as such and radical Islam. I also think there's a difference between radical Islam and terrorism. Terrorism is a method of engaging in warfare. It's not an enemy. The enemy is a certain reading of Islam, a certain radicalized, extremist version of Islam. It is Islam. It's not a hijacking of Islam. It's not illegitimate. It is one of the Islamic trends, and it's at this moment a particularly powerful one. Its features are devotion to the Islamic law, the Sharia, the goal of applying the Sharia not only on oneself but on the whole world, as Yaron Brook mentioned, a drive to power not only in one's own country but globally, and a political ideology that is in outline, if not in detail, similar to fascism and communism, in that it is totalitarian. It seeks to control every aspect of life, from child rearing and sexuality to personal cleanliness and education, to governance, judiciary, taxation, military affairs, and so forth. There are two wings of this radical Islamic movement. We tend to focus on the violent one for obvious reason. When explosions take place, it captures our attention, as just recently in Algeria, or all the time in Iraq, and so often in Israel. But there is another form of radical Islam that I think might in the end be more capable of achieving its goals, and that is a non-violent version, a lawful version. For example, the Prime Minister of Turkey is an Islamist who has achieved power entirely legitimately, and perhaps will go on in the next month or so to become president of the country. One sees a movement, both abroad and domestically, of lawful Islam that is no less dangerous. It is not just terrorists in the caves of Afghanistan. It is students in UCLA who are as much a problem as terrorists. It is the Islamists at home. It is the Islamists in our educational institutions, in the media, in public life, who are as great a danger as the terrorists. Second question, what do we do about this? What are our war goals? Yaron Brook suggests that we must crush the enemy, and I agree, but I would modify that slightly and say that we must crush the will of the enemy. The enemy must give up his goals. He must despair of achieving them. And this means, in the long term, modernizing the religion of Islam. This is an ambitious goal for the United States. It is a difficult goal, but it is a goal that we must achieve because radical Islam is the strategic goal, is the strategic enemy of the United States. I would suggest that we need to take two steps. First, we must defeat radical Islam. We must defeat it on the battlefields of Afghanistan and in the classrooms of UCLA. We must defeat...
Would the police escort those people out, please? Now? All right, we'll continue now. panelists will have 3 minutes each, or... Oh, you didn't finish? I'm sorry, Dr. Pipes hasn't finished.
As I said, the Islamists must be defeated in the classrooms of UCLA. So briefly to conclude, our goal is in the first place to our goal must be to defeat radical Islam as we defeated fascists and communists. My mantra is radical Islam is the problem, moderate Islam is the solution. And secondly, we must help the moderates. They may be few in number, I wouldn't argue that, but I do think they exist, and they can exist more strongly if we, the U.S. government and people, stand by them and help them. Thank you.
I will now pose a series of 4 questions to the panelists. They'll have 3 minutes each to reply, so we'll go in reverse order, starting with Dr. Pipes. First question, what is the fundamental cause of the conflict between the Muslim world and the West?
The fundamental cause of the conflict is the ideology of radical Islam. It is not that we have done something wrong. It is not that we are evil. It is that we are facing a extremist, radical utopian ideology such as prior existed in the fascist movement and the communist movement. Now the single live radical utopian ideology in the world is radical Islam.
Dr. Sultan.
The conflict between West and Islam is a conflict between 2 opposite systems of beliefs, values, norms, customs, and manners. The Muslim lifestyle and teachings are complete opposite to modernity and to the Western way of life. The Western culture is for human rights, while the Islamic Sharia violates these rights at all levels. Thank you.
I think we're all in agreement here. The fundamental cause is the ideology of totalitarian Islam, the ideology of radical Islam. It is their notion that religion should dictate every aspect of a human being's life. It is their notion that individuals have no rights, that the group dictate everything in terms of the life of the individual. It is a complete denial of everything that we cherish in the West. Its source is, the source of the conflict is the difference between totalitarian Islam's ideology and the way we need to live in order to be successful, in order to prosper. They do not value individual freedom. They do not value the right to speech, as I think you saw illustrated here a little bit, but you see even more brutally illustrated in the Middle East when somebody speaks up against Islam. Speaking out against Islam is punishable by prison term or even death. Salman Rushdie is an example of that. What did he do to justify a death sentence? He criticized Islam. So there is a fundamental philosophical